Hello everybody. I hope you all are doing well. I'm CaJuJu and this is a deck check. I'll be giving you straight up gameplay and impressions of how well each of the various games work through the Steam Deck, as well as how the controls feel, what settings I had to use to get the game to run smoothly, and whether I personally would prefer to play this game on the PC or on my Steam Deck. I won't be doing any sort of deep dive into the performance of the hardware of the Steam Deck itself. I will leave the performance overlay on for the FPS for you to observe as we go through this deck check. I am recording my Steam Deck through the capture card, so you may see some odd visual interactions since it doesn't seem to want to play nice with the Steam Deck. Some footage is at 1280 by 800 and some are at 1280 by 720, since I figured out later in my recordings that I could change the resolution to remove the extra black spaces on the side of this recording, so please bear with me. So there's timestamps provided for you to get straight to the part that you are interested in. So be sure to check that, especially if you just want to see gameplay with no commentary. So let's get started. The game we are checking out is Guild Wars 2. This is my personal favorite MMO, which came out back in 2012. And even though it sounds dated, it still holds up well enough to keep me coming back for more in 2022. Guild Wars 2 recently released their newest expansion, which is the End of Dragons expansion. So now is a good time for me to jump back into Guild Wars 2 and spend a considerable amount of time playing through the expansion on the Steam Deck. To avoid giving out spoilers for End of Dragons, I'll only show myself wandering and doing whatever events is around in the first map of End of Dragons. So don't worry about being spoiled too much. If you don't know what Guild Wars 2 is, it is a massive multiplayer online game set in the fantasy world of Tyria, 250 years after the players have defeated the Great Destroyer in the Eye of the North expansion for Guild Wars 1. Guild Wars 2 has a listing on Steam, but there is no date or hint as to when it will come to Steam, so I do not have an official status to compare my experience to for Guild Wars 2. We'll only be checking out the open world aspect of the game. I'm not too much into PvP for Guild Wars 2, so I don't really know how any of that works. I personally just enjoy wandering around doing dynamic events and completing my personal objectives. Guild Wars 2 is heavy on keyboard and mouse controls. I honestly thought it would be near impossible for me to get all the controls I would need binded on the buttons for the Steam Deck, but I seem to have somehow made it work and at least have an idea of how to make it work. I'll show what my button layout looks like, and it is specifically made for my Blade Sworn Warrior. The controls I have on the desktop PC are saved with my account in Guild Wars 2. When I downloaded it on the Steam Deck, I just had to map the keys and mouse buttons to whatever the Steam Deck controls had to offer without altering my desktop PC setup. I plan to make different personal layouts for all the different classes that I play, since it doesn't seem like I can make the controls universal to where it all makes sense in my head. But it could very much be a different situation for you. I tried to install the Radial mount add-on to my Guild Wars 2 files, but I couldn't get it to work. But Steam has their own Radial menu option for the trackpads. I set the mount that I have to the Radial menu, and I can just touch a specific area of the left trackpad to summon the mount that I want. My action cam is toggled by pushing in the left joystick, so I can quickly switch to using the right trackpad to control the cursor and interact with it as I would on PC. I assigned a long press on the left joystick to be my right click, which I use to interact with items in my inventory. Typing is also simple, but also easy to make a mistake. Since my buttons are binded to keys on the keyboard, I sometimes input whatever letter or number I had in that button by accident. The keyboard does not come up automatically, so you will need to press the Steam button plus the X button to pull up the on-screen keyboard. I could probably spend more time talking about how I set my key bindings to the Steam Deck, but it is going to depend on how you do it personally. I've seen someone pull up a number menu controlled by the right trackpad to use his weapon skills on. I personally prefer to just bind them to a specific button for quick response. Also wanted to quickly point out how you can set the same button to multiple different responses. So Y could be weapon skill 1, 2, or 3. Skill 1 could be a regular press on Y, while skill 2 could be a double press on Y, or while skill 3 could be a long press on Y. Now, I wouldn't really recommend that, but if that's how you like it, then you can go ahead and try that out for yourself. So the main point to gain from this section is that it is possible to play Guild Wars 2 on just the Steam Deck's offered controls. But be prepared to spend possibly a couple hours binding buttons to the right key, since there is no out-of-the-box way for you to play with decent controls. There was no need to have a mouse and keyboard attached to the Steam Deck. Steam Deck has an easy to use UI to help you set up your controls. It'll just take a little bit of time and a little bit of creativity, and also learning and remembering your own controls that you set for yourself. Play Guild Wars 2 on a 1280 by 800 resolution, which is the native resolution for the Steam Deck. Some footage in this video is 1280 by 800 and some are 1280 by 720. It's only like that because I forgot to change the resolution specifically for recording. Normally I would just leave it at 1280 by 800 because that looks normal on the Steam Deck and fills up the Steam Deck screen. 1280 by 720 doesn't quite do that, or looks a bit odd. I'll show you what my graphics settings look like so you can get an idea of what I'm working with. I tinkered with it a bit throughout this recording to show that the FPS does not really change all that much, whether it is on high or low settings. I didn't want to sacrifice the look too much since Guild Wars 2 has some nice looking animations and environments. I tried to find the best middle ground for graphic quality and game performance. The game can reach up to 60 FPS on low settings, but that is very dependent on how big the map instant is. Some are small and not as cluttered as other areas to achieve that 60 FPS, but large and busy areas cause the game to dip to 30 and even around 10 FPS. I still find it playable since FPS drops are pretty normal in MMO games, especially when you're doing a huge event and everyone is throwing animations and special effects left, right, and center. My ideal settings is to limit the FPS to 30 just to get the most consistent frame rate. FSR helps, but it also made the game look blurry for some strange reason. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does, so normally I just decide to leave it off. I got around 30 FPS when just wandering the world and doing some solo fights, but dipped to 20 and below in larger events. Lowering graphic settings help, but Guild Wars 2 is more dependent on the quality of CPU, so it feels the same whether your graphic quality is low or high. Guild Wars 2 was one of the first games I've had in mind to try out while waiting for my Steam Deck. I honestly didn't think it would perform great since Guild Wars 2 doesn't always feel the best optimized, even on my desktop PC. But I was happy that installation was pretty straightforward and that it runs well. Ideally, I would have liked to have FPS of 60 with dips in busy areas, but I still find it playable with 30 FPS with heavy dips in busy areas. If Guild Wars 2 ever does get on Steam, it most likely would end up with an unsupported label since the game makes no accommodation to controllers. With Steam's ability to create custom control layouts and bindings, I find that the game is to be playable. It really does make me wish there was official controller support on Guild Wars 2, but I am glad it is still a possibility. It just takes a couple of hours of extra setup and testing the controls before you decide to continue whatever you were doing in Guild Wars 2. I can see myself playing Guild Wars 2 on the Steam Deck, but I would prefer to play Guild Wars 2 on my desktop PC. Guild Wars 2 has great visuals, and it does feel like a shame that I would miss them in the breathtaking world that it has created. FPS is also a major factor in my decision since Steam Deck just barely makes it playable. I got frame rate as low as 10 to 15 FPS on the lowest possible graphics settings with FSR. It feels great to play on handheld, but to experience the most from Guild Wars 2, my desktop PC is what I prefer. But let me know in the comments down below if you think otherwise, or if I have missed anything you'd like to see for the next video. If there's a specific game you'd like me to try out, feel free to leave a suggestion in the comments as well. I'll leave some gameplay after this outro for you to watch if you just want to see gameplay without any commentary. So remember to like, comment, share, subscribe. Until then, I will see you all later. Goodbye.
mission.
Strong.
Is that your secret? Stay alive. Agents, with me!
Armored up. Feel it. It's over.
I'm neither here nor there.
Ready? That looks valuable.
It's over.
Still rising. More ammo. It's over. Concentrate. Ready, willing, the dragon waits.
Face me like a real car. Stop creeping in the shadow. United States. Get over here so I can slaughter you.
More ammo.
I used to be weak and thankless like you. Not anymore.
Face them down! Hold on, Legion!
Calm before the storm. That feels good.
What?
That looks valuable.